there, bag makers. Welcome back to my channel. My name's Melissa and I'm with Sew Yours. If you're brand new here, I design sewing patterns for bag making and sell all of the supplies needed to make your very own bags on our website at sewyours.com. And now we have our store here in Dunellen, Florida. So if you are local to Dunellen, please stop in, say hi, and do your shopping in person. All right, today's video is all about my latest sewing pattern. Please meet the Joey Sling. I am going to walk you through all the steps to make your very own Joey Sling today. This is the beautiful bag that we'll be making in today's video, and I wanted to point out that there is two different size options for you. If you print the pattern at 100%, you will get this size right here, and if you want the smaller mini version, then print your pattern at 85%. I have done a separate introductory video that goes over all of the features this bag has to offer, as well as the hardware that you are going to need to make your very own Joey Sling. We do have hardware kits available for purchase on our website at sewyours.com. So make sure you check out the description box for the link on the introductory video so you can learn more about the Joey Sling. We're just going to jump right in and start making up this Joey Sling right now. Let's begin by going over all of the pieces that make up the Joey Sling. This does have a lot of pattern pieces to it, but because the size of the Joey Sling is relatively small and it's a fairly simple construction, there's no lining zipper pockets or anything like that, this goes together pretty quickly. So I've got my Joey Sling that I made in the written pattern right here on my left that we can refer to. I like to group my fabric into the exterior front, my exterior back pieces. Up here off camera, I've got my lining panels, and then off to the left, I've got my zipper and gusset, which we'll go over in just a moment. So everything's grouped. I also have these little tabs that are included in the pattern to help you stay organized, and I'll also refer to these so you know which pattern pieces I'm talking about here in the video. One thing before you get going is that you do need to have stabilizer for your bag, and there is the gusset that is in three separate sections right here that we need to sew together right from the get-go in order to then apply our gusset stabilizer piece, which I haven't done yet on my pattern. But if you want to keep your heat press on or your iron on only one time, I do recommend quickly putting this together, and then you can iron your stabilizer onto your gusset pieces. So that is the first step in the pattern, which we're going to do over in a little bit here in the video. I just wanted to kind of point that out to consider that when you have your iron or your heat press on. Other than that, I've already gone ahead and ironed on my woven interfacing to all cotton fabric. So if you're using cotton fabric for your exterior, you're also going to want to use woven interfacing on the wrong side. For me, I'm used to using cotton fabric for my lining. And then you'll iron on all of your stabilizer pieces to the wrong side of the pattern pieces that do require stabilizer. I recommend the Decaville Light here, which I've already got on all of my pieces that require that. Let's go over our exterior front to begin with. First up, we've got our front flap, that is pattern piece C. You'll need one exterior, one lining, and two interfacings, woven interfacings if you're using cotton fabrics. Exclude that if you're not using any cotton fabrics. So for me, I've chosen to use my exterior fabric for both the exterior of my flap as well as my lining of my flap, which I've done on this one. And the reason that I've chosen that is I did not want my cotton fabric kind of peeking through around the edges here, because I've chosen to use the same print but in a white. So that's starkly different. So I didn't want a bunch of white kind of peeking around the edges. So that's why I am using the same fabrics here for my flap. So the one side, this is going to be the exterior front of the flap here. I've got the Decaville ironed onto that. And the easiest way to iron the Decaville to all of your pieces is take your ruler, measure in 1/2 inch from the straight edge, 1/2 inch from one other edge here, and then place that stabilizer where those two lines meet. And you can iron that on. That way you make sure that it's perfectly centered. So those are my two front flap pieces. The stabilizer piece is pattern piece C1. So we have that. Our front exterior top piece, we've got one exterior. You need one woven interfacing for cotton. And you also need pattern piece A1, which is your stabilizer. And here you can visually see how I drew these lines in order to get that stabilizer centered appropriately. So that's going to be this piece right here, where we're going to put either our magnetic snap or our turn lock. Moving on to our front slip pocket, pattern piece D and a D1. That's the exterior. You need one of those. You need a lining as well. So this is my cotton fabric for my lining. And then you need your stabilizer. So that is D1. So that is the front of my slip pocket. This piece right here is pattern piece B, the front exterior bottom. You need one lining piece and one woven interfacing. Now the reason that I have lining here is because it's going to reduce the bulk along the curved edges right here if we're using quilting cotton versus another piece of exterior fabric right here like the vinyl. I could have simply made this one piece all the same fabric, and you can certainly use your lining piece if you don't want to cut this in two different sections. That's completely up to you. So that's merely to reduce the bulk along the curves here. So you need pattern piece B in your lining fabric. So that is everything for the exterior front. I'll set that aside. Let's move on to our exterior back. All right, for our exterior back, first up we have the back exterior bottom piece, pattern piece F, as well as F1, which is our stabilizer. You need one exterior and one woven interfacing for cotton fabric. I've ironed that on and centered it right here for us. Here is my D-ring anchor. This is pattern piece J. You need one exterior and one woven interfacing. And I've drawn a line down the center here and added some double-sided tape, so that is ready to go for later on. So here is our back exterior bottom piece. This is our D-ring anchor right here. Now we have our strap connector. Now I want to point out with the strap connector that you have different options for this bag. This is going to depend on if you are using a 1-inch wide piece of webbing or a 1.5-inch wide piece of webbing, or if you've chosen to make your own strap, whether it's 1 or 1.5 inches wide. So you want to pick the pattern piece, whether it's pattern piece G or H, and cut that accordingly. I'm going to be using our handcrafted webbing here that is 1.5 inches in width for my strap. So I've chosen to go with pattern piece G and G1 for the 1.5-inch wide webbing. And I've ironed on my stabilizer to one of my pieces. So you'll need two exterior pieces right here. If you're using cotton, woven interfacing as well for those. So only cut G or H depending on the width of your strap. Another thing I wanted to point out in the mini version, so here is the pattern pieces for the strap connector right here. So this is the 1.5 inch, this is the 1-inch pieces. And then here I've got my D-ring anchor. This particular page, you do not want to reduce it on the mini size. So if you've chosen to make yours at 85%, you want to still print this page at 100% because you don't want these shrunk down. So I just wanted to point that out. Make sure you print this page at 100%, which I do say that here on the top. And lastly, for our back, we've got our back exterior top piece, E and E1. You need one exterior and one woven interfacing. For this particular piece on the mini sized, printed at 85%, you can really just omit this piece because it's going to be too skinny and too small. It's really not going to be necessary at that point at an 85% size. So that is this little piece right here that holds the strap connector between the two. Now let's take a look at our lining. So we have two lining panels. I'm using quilting cotton. You could also use waterproof canvas here if you'd like. And this is going to be pattern piece I. You need two of those as well as two woven interfacing, which I have already ironed onto my pieces. And for one side of our lining, we are going to make credit card slots so that we can put 4 credit cards in. So you need 2 of pattern piece N for your credit card slots. They have to be a non-fraying fabric. So I've chosen to do the milled grain faux leather here for those 2 pieces. And I'll let you look inside this one to see closer how the credit card slots look. So there are my credit card slots so that we can get 4 credit cards in there. And lastly, we have our mesh pocket. This is pattern piece O, and I've already clipped on my fold over elastic. This is 1-inch wide fold over elastic. I like to cut mine just a little bit larger to start, and then I usually just trim it off once I've sewn it on there. So I've got my mesh. We've got lots and lots of colors of our mesh, and we brought in quite a bit so that we have enough for you guys if you want to order some mesh for with your pattern when you get your pattern. Now, one thing to point out here is the top of this is tapered in a little bit smaller. So don't worry, it is intentionally a little bit smaller. Later on, we are going to tug on this just a little bit and make it taut to meet up the edges right here. The reason that we have to do that is once we turn this right side out, on one of my prototypes, this pocket right here was way too baggy and loose. And you can see it's already a little bit loose, but that's kind of sufficient, just enough to get what you need to get in there. If I didn't do that, it was much looser. So we intentionally left this a little bit smaller. And if you've chosen to use cotton fabric for your slip pocket here, you can certainly do that, and it still works to have this piece a little bit smaller. One of our testers did it and said it came together beautifully and still worked great. So make sure you still follow the measurements and the pattern piece for O for your mesh, or if you're using cotton fabric here. That is our lining. Okay, we're going to go over the gusset and the zipper panel now. So our gusset is these three pieces that wrap around the bottom of the bag. And our zipper panel are these two pieces right here with the zipper on it. As I already mentioned, the first thing that you'll want to do is to put together your gusset pieces so that you can get that stabilizer ironed on. So pretty simple here. You're just going to go and have L1, which is your left gusset, in your exterior fabric. L2 is your middle gusset, and L3 is your right gusset. If you're using cotton fabric, make sure you have your woven interfacing already ironed onto that. Then you're going to bring L1 to meet L2, clip into place, sew that with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Open that up, take your seam allowances into the opposite directions and top stitch along the left and the right hand side of that seam at an 1/8 of an inch, and repeat the same thing for L2 and L3 in order to get your full gusset piece. Then you'll take this over and apply your gusset stabilizer, making sure that it's centered here on your exterior gusset. So you can do that now. I'll show you quickly my completed one in the next step once we finish going over all of these pieces. So our gusset stabilizer is L4. Here is my gusset lining. So this is one full piece already with my woven interfacing on there. So you'll just need a pattern piece M, the gusset lining, one woven interfacing. Here is my zipper panel pieces, pattern piece K. You need 2 exterior, 2 lining, and 4 woven interfacing if you're using 4 cotton fabric pieces. So for mine, I'm doing 2 of our pebble texture printed vinyl. This is, I think, called Lavender Nights, so I don't need any woven interfacing on those or stabilizer because it is such a small piece. Whenever we do sew it, there's no need to have any stabilizer here. And then my 2 lining pieces, which are in the cotton fabric with the woven interfacing. Next up, we've got, like I mentioned earlier, our handcrafted webbing in the 1.5 inch wide. Now we are getting very low in stock. We just released this a couple of weeks ago and it's pretty much sold out. We've got a lot of chocolate colored left, hardly any hot pink, which is this one right here. We've got a little bit of black left and navy, but I foresee that going very quickly. But don't worry, we actually have our own exclusive handmade webbing that's currently in production. We'll be releasing in the near future. And we've got that in a ton of colors that are coming in. So we're really excited to have that. So let me set this aside. You're going to need 1 inch wide fold over elastic. You could also use waterproof canvas, double fold bias tape, whatever binding that you choose to use to bind your bag, since this is a bound bag. So here I've got a I have a fold over elastic for my binding in there. And I already mentioned we needed the fold over elastic for your mesh pocket. So for me, I'm going to do white since my lining is white. But then I chose to do this nice lilac color because my pocket's purple. So I just decided to do that. All right, hardware is pretty simple. We do have hardware kits available for this bag that do include the turn lock, as that is my preferred closure for the flap. I just really think it makes the bag pop, but you can use a magnetic snap here if you'd like instead of a turn lock. But all of the hardware kits are going to include the turn lock. The hardware kits are also going to include a handmade bag tag, which I have here on this one. We've got that covered right now. So you'll get a handmade bag tag in your hardware kit. I have also included 2 rivets for the hardware kits in case you want to add rivets. I have not added rivets to any of mine, but you can add rivets here to your strap connector if you'd like. Angie did 1 on hers. Some of the testers did 2. You could also skip the decorative stitching and just do a couple of rivets. Completely up to you, but I've given you that option to have the rivets here if you want. You could also use rivets on your strap if you wanted to. I've sewn mine on here, so that's another way to use those 2 rivets. So we've given those to you. You're also going to need number 5 zipper tape for your main zipper closure and 1 to 2 zipper pulls, in addition to the turn lock that I just mentioned. You're going to need a minimum of 2 3/4 inch D-rings, which are going to be here on the bottom of the bag to anchor your strap. Now, there is an alternative way of doing this as well. Let me find that bag for you. You can choose to leave the D-ring anchor loose right here and just do 1 3/4 inch D-ring if you'd like, and that'll allow it to slide back and forth. Personally, I don't like it because it just feels a little bit flimsy. I'm afraid it might get caught on something. So I don't like that method, but you can do that if you want. I would recommend adding some woven interfacing on the D-ring, regardless of what type of fabric you're using here. I didn't use it, and I think that little bit of extra thickness and structure would help here. So completely up to you if you want to do the 1 D-ring and allow it to slide back and forth, or if you want to do the 2 D-rings and have them anchored into place. So that is where you could put 2 D-rings. If you want to add a D-ring to your strap connector piece right here, as Sharon did on her bag, then you will need 1 additional D-ring. So here is another 3/4 inch D-ring. You could do a 1 inch D-ring, but I think it would be a little too big in appearance. So I would stick with that, and this D-ring here would be for the purpose of hanging it up on a hook if you want to do that. So that is why that D-ring's there. Now, this is not in the pattern. This would be something additional that you could add on your own if you want to. You are going to need a 1.5 inch wide snap hook, or if you are using a 1 inch wide strap, then you'll need the 1 inch wide. The hardware kit includes the 1.5 inch wide. In addition, you will need a strap slider to make your strap adjustable. Again, it's based upon the width of the webbing or the strap that you're making. The hardware kit is the 1.5 inch wide. So there's many different ways of doing your strap. The way that I've done it here in the pattern is with the hardware that I've just mentioned right here. But I personally like to doll it up a little bit. And let me show you here on this one. I made my own strap, which is 1 inch wide. So I did that on this one. And of course, 1 inch wide hardware there. The other way that I like to dress it up is by using our strap ends right here. So we have acrylic strap end templates that allow you to make this decorative strap end. This tapers 1.5 inch wide webbing down to a 3/4 inch snap hook. So that would be a change if you wanted to do your own. You can grab that hardware individually instead of getting the kit. But you're also going to need a rectangle ring, the width of your webbing for that. And the same thing, a strap slider, the width of your webbing. So I personally love this. This is the way that I like to make it. But to keep it simple and easy for the pattern, I have just given you the instructions and the hardware necessary to do this version right here. All right, let's jump into it and start working on our gusset exterior, and then we'll move on to our exterior front. I've sewn together L1, L2, and L3, the gusset pieces, and I have ironed on L4, my stabilizer. So we can set that aside. Let's start with our exterior front pieces. One thing I wanted to recommend as far as fabric selections go is for your front flap, if you've chosen to do a turn lock, I like keeping my front flap a solid fabric right here versus using a print. And that is that it allows the turn lock to kind of shine and really pop on this fabric right here. If I were to put it here on the printed fabric, it kind of gets lost and you don't see the beauty of the turn lock. So that is just a recommendation. Of course, it's up to personal preference. You can also use a magnetic snap instead of a turn lock. Let's construct our front flap. So pattern piece C and C1, both your exterior and your lining pieces. Again, I'm using my exterior for both of these. On your exterior piece, you'll need your front flap stabilizer C1 already ironed on there. So we're going to place these right sides together, clip them into place, and sew along this edge at 3/8 of an inch. Do not sew the bottom. Once that has been sewn, you'll trim down your seam allowance to about 1/4 of an inch. You could also clip notches in your curves. Turn right side out. I like to just roll my edges. If you're using all cotton fabric, you can press this with an iron. And then we'll take this over to our sewing machine and top stitch along this curved edge at 1/8 of an inch. Now it's time to install our turn lock. Now, if you've chosen to do a magnetic snap, you can still do that at this point because you still have access to this lining side right here to install the magnetic snap. So go ahead and do that per your manufacturer's instructions. I always recommend adding a little bit of Decovite behind the fabric wherever that's going to be, and then put your washer over that. So feel free to do your magnetic snap on your lining side, which would be this one, because this is the one without the stabilizer. However, I'm going to be doing the turn lock, so I'll show you how to do that. Now, I've given you the placement markings for your turn lock, as well as your bag tag, which we'll do later on. I always forget to do this right when I cut my pattern pieces out, but you can still do it at this point, which I'm going to do. I need to find the bottom center of my flap, and I just fold that into half and cut a little notch here. So I know where my center is at the bottom. And I just take my pattern piece, fold it in half, and place the bottom raw edge here of the straight side with the center of the pattern piece. I'll grab my air erasable pen and just transfer that marking from the pattern piece, which I've already cut the hole out right there. I just used my Japanese hole punch to cut that, making sure that I use a little mat just to protect my workspace because I don't want to use a Japanese hole punch on my nice cutting mat. So I've got this that I use there. Oops. And now that I've got my marking on here, which is probably hard for you to see, but it's right there. Now I know where to kind of center the center of the hole right here on my turn lock with that marking, which it's right there. I'm going to move this closer to myself so I can see it. And I do like that placement. So now I'll get my air erasable pen, hold down the turn lock, and just trace the inner diameter there of that hole. And again, it's probably very difficult to see on camera, but now I know where I need to punch my hole. I have recently purchased a new punch set because a couple of my dies were getting a little bit dull, so this is the newest set that I have. The other set I've shown you many times on camera. I couldn't seem to find this one anymore, so I got a smaller set, but it has what I need and that I commonly use. I'll put a link in the description box below for the Amazon link for that. So I'm just going to grab this one for my die, and the way that I've decided that that one fits appropriately is the hole is here in the back. I just kind of line it up and look through, and it's just a hair larger. This meaning this is a hair larger than the hole, which is what I want. And I won't have enough clearance for these screws right here. So I'll come in later on and use my Japanese hole punch in order to cut out those screws. So let me get that done. And if I just stretch the fabric ever so slightly, I can now see my screw holes. So I'll place my back of my turn lock on top of that. You can add some Loctite if you'd like here to your screw holes. You could also use some E6000 in between. I generally don't do that, but that is an option. I'm going to grab my screwdriver and just start screwing this in. All right, before making those screws tight, I'm just going to visually look and make sure it's straight. I feel like I just needed to tilt that just a bit. And now I'll proceed to tighten up my screws. There is my one half of my female side of my turn lock installed. Now I can come in and base stitch along this bottom straight edge at 1/8 of an inch. In editing the video, I noticed that I did not hit record on this next little clip, so let me explain what I've done up until this point. I placed the flap right sides together with the front slip pocket exterior piece, which is pattern piece D, matching up the center straight edges. I base stitched that into place with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, I kind of fast forwarded in time. Well, I actually just found a mistake as I was starting my video editing along the way here and realized I did not add my bag tag in the prior clip or where this should be now in the filming. So disregard the fact that I've got this exterior panel here behind here. We're going to pretend like that doesn't exist. What I had to do is open up my base stitching here to get access to the front slip pocket. So in order to add your bag tag here, just like our magnetic, or not our magnetic snap, but our turn lock, we've got our suggested bag tag placement, which is optional. I folded my pattern piece in half, found the bottom center here of the front slip pocket, lined those two up, got my placement for my center here, and installed my bag tag. I just opened up enough of the bottom here to get my little cutting mat in here in order to cut my slits with my blade, and then I inserted that. So make sure you add your bag tag like I just described before getting to this point here that I've done. But that's life. That's what happens. I didn't have my bag tag pulled from the back of the studio here, and that's why I forgot it, because I didn't have it here on my table. So I really like the bag tag. I think it really stands out. You can put your bag tag wherever you want. If you're using a magnetic snap, you might want to actually put it here on the flap. You may want to put it a little bit lower. Completely up to you. This is just where I find that I like it the best. All right, this is sewn on, and that is just 1/8 of an inch base stitch that I did right here. Now we'll grab our D lining piece right here and place that right sides together with the exterior, and your flap will be sandwiched in between. Clip this into place along the top edge, and you're going to sew that on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have sewn that, you can turn everything right side out. And I like to finger press everything away from each other. I am going to now come in and top stitch along this side at 1/8 of an inch and base stitch along the curved edge at 1/8 of an inch. All right, top stitched and base stitched. Now we are going to join the front exterior top A and front exterior bottom B together. Make sure that you find the centers of the straight edges. Then match up the straight edge middles together. Clip this into place and sew this on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance along the straight edge. Okay, I have sewn those together. I then opened up to lay this flat, bringing the exterior top here, seam allowances to the down position, and I top stitched along the lining portion right here at 1/8 of an inch. So that is done. Now we need to mark our placement for the male portion of our turn lock, or the opposite side of your magnetic snap if you're doing that. You may have already made your marks already, but like I said, I always forget to do this, so I need to do it now. So grab pattern piece A, your front exterior top. Here is the suggested turn lock or magnetic snap placement. I have not yet punched my hole to do that, so let me get that done. So I just folded the top here to get the center point. I also need to find the top center here of the front exterior top piece. So I'm just matching everything up. Flip a little notch here. And now I can take the folded edge of the center and match that up with the top edge. Make sure I get my sides all lined up. Grab your air erasable pen to make your mark. And it'll be hard to see, but it's right there in the center. And I am now going to place my turn lock. Now this turn lock always gets me almost every single time I install it incorrectly, because generally with a magnetic snap, your prongs are going horizontally whenever you install it, just like this. But with this turn lock, it's opposite. So you want your prongs going vertically. And just so you can see from a profile there, that's what I mean by vertically. So that's how I want to do it. I've got my washer right here. And I'm going to just kind of eyeball where the center is. And I can mark this here on my washer just to kind of see where my center is. Since this washer is kind of closed compared to some of the other ones that have lots of openings. And I'm just going to eyeball, and that looks like it's centered here with the center. Now I'm going to make my markings where the prongs belong. And I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife. This is my X-Acto knife from Hannah Woodworking that I had gotten at one of the So Magical Expos. Now I'm just going to cut, and I'm going to bring this closer because it's a little difficult to see with the black and the purple marking. All right, my whole little slits are cut there. And I've already got the Decaville behind there, so I don't need to add any additional Decaville. I need to push this in just a little bit, these prongs. Add my washer to the back. I'm just going to hold this portion of the turn lock here and use my hammer to kind of just get it flattened a little bit. And now I'll add some duct tape. And everything is lined up beautifully. So now I will clip this into place, and I'm just going to base stitch once more to secure the slip pocket here to the exterior front panel that we've just created. Okay, there is my exterior front slip pocket right there. I love these fabrics together. This is going to be a beauty. All right, so let's trim down all these little threads. And we can set our exterior front aside. We're going to work on our exterior back right now. So you're going to need pattern piece E as well as E1 with your stabilizer on, pattern piece F and F1, as well as your D-ring anchor, which is J, as well as your strap connector here. So the order that you do this doesn't really matter. We can do the strap connector first and then the D-ring, or vice versa. I think I'm going to do the D-ring anchor right now. So I have my line drawn down the center length here, double-sided tape along both sides of the line drawn. Remove that double-sided tape paper backing here. Fold this in to meet that center line. Once that has been sewn, once that's been folded to the center, if you've chosen to just do the one D-ring and allow it to slide back and forth like this one, I would recommend that you top stitch twice. So I've done it once on this one, but I recommend doing a double row of top stitching at 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch from both sides. Gives it a little bit more structure as well. So if you want to do that, go ahead and sew those 2 rows of top stitching now. But if you are going to follow along with the way it's written in the pattern to anchor both D-rings into place like this, then I would recommend you just sew a row of top stitching down this side at 1/4 of an inch and this side at 1/4 of an inch. So let me get that done. I've top stitched my D-ring anchor, and I've added both of my 3/4 inch D-rings here since I'm doing 2. You'll need pattern piece F, so you can refer to the D-ring anchor placement. This top line here, that's a solid line, and the bottom solid line. The dotted lines are just the representation for the stitching, so that's all that is. So we're just going to refer to the solid lines. So match up the bottom raw edge here of the fabric to your pattern piece. I think I can see the regular pen a little bit better when I'm transferring my markings. So all I'm going to do is transfer that top line and just make a little notch, like 1/8 of an inch notch for the top and the bottom line here. And then repeat that for the opposite side. Now I will place my D-ring anchor in between those lines and clip this into place. There is a little bit of excess, as you can see right here. We'll trim that down in just a moment, but I'll get this lined up off camera perfectly and come in and just clip it into place so that it stays into place while I sew this on. Just base stitch along this edge here at 1/8 of an inch, as well as the opposite side at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, trim off that excess. I think it's best to flip this over so you can see it. Now we want to mark in 1 inch from both of these edges, so just grab your ruler. And I'm going to switch over to the sew line pen so that way I can have that mark disappear. And repeat for the opposite side. And hopefully you can see that little line that I just drew, and the opposite side as well. From here, we are going to take our D-rings and we're going to slide them all the way to the outsides. Take this over to your sewing machine and you are going to begin stitching along this vertical line that you've drawn. So along the bottom edge at 1/8 of an inch, stop at this 1 inch line that you've drawn, go back up and then stitch along the top edge at 1/8 of an inch. That is now secured into place. It's better to see it here from this side. Now you want to just take your D-rings and tuck them in this way so that way they're out of the way later on whenever we're sewing everything together. Let's work on our strap connector and our strap or our webbing here. I didn't show this earlier, but we do need 2 pieces that are going to be our strap ends if you want to add strap ends. But if you have strap end hardware that you want to use, then you're going to skip this. All this is a 1 inch piece by a 1.5 inch piece wide, because it's 1.5 inch webbing I'm using. If you're using 1 inch wide webbing, it's 1 by 1. I drew a line down the length, added some double-sided tape, and these are going to be my strap ends, which I'll show you in just a moment. I got my lighter here because I heat sealed both ends of my webbing. You could also use fray check if you want instead, so that way it does not fray. And I have drawn a line 4 inches down from one of the short raw edges here and made a line with my air erasable pen. The first step is to grab your strap slider that I have, and we are going to fold this around the center bar of the strap slider. And then this would come down to that 4 inch line that was drawn, and you can clip this into place. And this is where I'm going to attach my first strap end. I could do this before or after folding this around the bar. Either way, it doesn't matter. Remove your paper backing from your double-sided tape and wrap this around the webbing. Now, if you're using webbing, you could also just simply fold in your raw edges and sew those down in the next step instead of doing this. But I like the little finished edge like that we have here with the vinyl fabric. So that is what it looks like. I see there's a little bit extra here, so I'm going to grab my scissors and trim that down. And I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and base stitch this, or I should just say top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. After that has been top stitched, we can now secure this into place. So I've got it here folded over 2 inches. You can leave it like that, or you can back it down a little bit. You don't quite need that much. So I'm going to back it down, and now I'm just going to sew a row of stitching here. You can do a box with an X in it, whatever you want. This bag isn't going to be very heavy, so I'm not too concerned. I might just do a couple rows of stitching here. All right, that is now sewn into place. Now we want to feed our snap hook here onto the opposite side. So I was making sure that nothing was twisted. And I'm sliding this on. This is the wrong side of my webbing because the other side is the embossed side. I'm going to bring this up, and then I'm going to feed this through the opposite side, or I should say the left side of the strap slider, down over the bar and over through the right side of the strap slider. Make sure that nothing is twisted, so this looks appropriate now. Just like that. And now we can move forward with doing our strap. And now we want to attach our strap connector to our webbing. I have my webbing facing right side down, so you can also see that by how the strap slider is. It's facing down. So we want it in that direction. And our strap connector is facing up. This is the one with the Decaville on it. I've also drawn a line 3 inches in from the short raw edge of the webbing, and I'm matching that up right here with the top edge of the strap connector. Now, if you are going to do this without the D-ring little hook that we are making on this one, this is not in the pattern. You can move forward without the D-ring, but I'm going to show you this. This is my first time doing this one. So just to remind you, this is what it looks like on Sharon's bag. So she's added a little D-ring so that she can hang up her strap connector. So this is a little bonus in the video for you. I wouldn't recommend this if you are working on a domestic sewing machine, as this might be too bulky for you. But all I did was basically the same thing as our D-ring anchor. It's 1.5 inches wide, and I did it 3 inches long with my 3/4 inch D-ring, and I added a top stitching row at 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch on both sides. Folded that around the D-ring and then base stitched the edge here at 1/8 of an inch to get my little D-ring strap connector, if you want to call it that. So if I want to do this, I need to place this in between the webbing and the strap connector piece here that has the Decaville on it. And I want this to hang out just a little bit. So I'm trying to envision my 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and how much I want hanging outside, or I should call it like just like this. So however much I want to hang out of the D-ring connector. So I think about here is going to be good. So I'll get that centered. I'll base stitch this into place. Then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to base stitch my webbing into place as well, matching it up with that 3-inch line that I drew from here. Or again, if you are not doing the D-ring, then you're going to just skip that entirely. Okay, those are now base stitched into place, and I did use my industrial Juki to do this because it definitely would have been too thick with these fabrics. But this will give you a little preview. If I flip this down like this, this is what your strap and strap connector should look like at this point. So you can see the right side here of the strap slider, and then we've got our little D-ring here hanging out. So let's continue on. And now we are going to place the opposite side here of our strap connector. So our other one, right sides together here to sandwich everything in between. And we're going to clip that into place and sew along this edge at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Do not sew the straight edge here. After that's been sewn, trim down those seam allowances to about 1/8 of an inch. I also cut some little triangular chunks out of these curves here, so that way it lays a little nicer. We're going to turn this right side out. And you probably need a turning tool or the edge of your scissors to help push those corners out. Just rolling the edges with my fingers. And now we will take this over to our sewing machine, and we are going to top stitch it around the curved edge at 1/8 of an inch and base stitch here at a 1/8 of an inch. All right, now we can do the decorative top stitching if you'd like to do that. As I've shown here on this one, it's also represented on the pattern piece for the strap connector. And all that is a V shape in this direction. So I will put my needle down right here, go to the center, say bottom, and then come up to that corner. And then I will do the opposite V. So I'll go to this corner, up to the top center, and then back down. So you can do that if you'd like. Or you can skip that step if you prefer. You want to add 1 or 2 rivets here, you can do that as well. So do whatever you like best. I'm going to do the top stitching. Okay, my top stitching is now complete. I didn't quite get this row to go right to the center, so I just picked it up and went this way. So there's a little bit of an X there. Still looks really great. And once I get this sewn on to the bag itself, you're not going to be able to see it. But this is what your strap with your strap connector should look like. Now it's time to add the strap with the strap connector to your back exterior. I have already found the top center of the bottom piece and the bottom center of the top piece here by clipping a notch here in the center. Now this part, pay very close attention to, because in all of my prototypes up until I did the one for the written pattern, I always did this step wrong because my brain just said to do it, my brain always told me to do this upside down. So pay attention right here. You want your strap connector with your strap right side up. So you want this strap slider right side up, and you want your fabric right side up. We are going to match the center here of your strap connector piece with the center top here of the bottom piece. Clip this into place, base stitch this on with 1/8 of an inch. Okay, once that is base stitched into place, grab the top portion of your back exterior and center it on top of the straight edge here. Clip this into place and sew this on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once that is sewn, flip this right side up and grab the strap connector, and everything's going to go to the upward position so that your seam allowances are going down. So let me flip this over so you can see that. So the strap connector and all of that, this raw edge is in the downward position now. And come in and top stitch here at 1/8 of an inch. All right, that is now top stitched. And we can connect our snap hook to our D-ring if we want, just to kind of get an idea of how it's going to look. But the easiest way now is to take a rubber band and roll up, shorten the strap as short as it goes, and then roll up your strap so that it is out of the way. So I just loosely kind of roll it here. That way we don't get this in the way later on as we're sewing everything together. So now we have our front exterior and our back exterior completed. So we're going to set both of these aside and work on our lining. All right, our lining is really simple. This is going to go real quick. So I've got one of my lining panels with the woven interfacing on it. Got my mesh pocket with my 1 inch wide fold over elastic. I've already folded that over the top straight raw edge. Clipped it into place. I'm going to sew this on with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. After that's sewn, trim down any excess off the sides and place it on top of your lining panel. And as we mentioned earlier, it is narrower as it goes up towards the top. That is done purposefully. We are going to bring one of the sides over when we start to sew here on the right hand side. And then we will pull it taut here on the left hand side. So it's going to pucker some like this. This is how it's going to look once it's all clipped into place and then sewn as well. There is going to be some tightness to it. That's the way that we want it to, so that way the pocket sits appropriately when the bag is finished later on. So I'm going to start sewing on this side and continue over to this side to base stitch into place at 1/8 of an inch. There is our mesh pocket all done. We're going to work on our credit card slots. Now, in order to get the proper placement for our credit card slots, we are going to refer to pattern piece I, which is our lining piece. We first want to place our upper credit card slot. So here you can see the upper credit card slot placement. Take that solid line and fold the pattern back on that line. Place the pattern on your fabric right side up and grab your air erasable pen. And I like to just draw a little mark right at the outside edges of the top placement. That's all I need right there. Going to grab one of my credit card slots and place it with the edges matching up with that line. I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew at 1/8 of an inch along this bottom edge. Okay, now that that is sewn into place, we're going to repeat that process for the lower credit card slot placement. So it's the next solid line. We're going to fold our pattern piece back on. So we did the top one. And now we're going to fold it back to the lower one. Place this on top. Grab your pen and indicate here on the upper credit card slot where the top edge of the bottom credit card slot meets. And line that up and sew along this bottom edge right here at 1/8 of an inch, then sew along the left and the right hand sides going in the direction from bottom to top and secure that into place, making sure that you are back stitching really well right here where both of these credit card slots meet and fold over. All right, so here is my credit card slots. We need to now divide those down the center. So I've already found my top and bottom center on my lining panel. I'm going to grab my quilting ruler and match up this edge here with the top and bottom centers, and then use my air erasable pen to draw the center line. And from here, I will come in again from the bottom, working my way towards the top and back stitching really well where these two folded edges are. My credit card slots are complete, so I now can carry 4 credit cards, but you can also double up and carry 8 in there if you'd like. You can see my lining is a little bit wonky. That's because I had a little bit of stretch to this fabric. I probably should have done some woven interfacing on the wrong side to take that stretch out. But in any event, once I get this base stitch to my exterior front, everything's going to be fine. It'll sit just fine, no problem at all. So now I want to take each of these and place them wrong sides together. I do like to have my credit card slots along with the exterior, because when I open up the bag, when it's sitting against the front of me, I can see my credit cards really easily. Whereas if I had them in this direction, it makes it a little more difficult to see the credit cards. But if you want it the other way around, feel free to do that. So I'm going to clip these two together, base stitch along this edge at 1/8 of an inch. I am also going to pair my mesh pocket lining piece with the back exterior, clip those together, matching up wrong sides, and base stitch this with 1/8 of an inch. They are now base stitched together, and we can set these aside while we work on our gusset and zipper panel. All right, I've got my 2 exterior zipper panel pieces as well as my 2 lining zipper panel pieces here, and my main zipper closure with my zipper pulls installed already. What I've done is I placed my zipper tape and one of my exterior zipper panels right sides together, matching up the long raw edge. Clip this into place. You're going to take this over to your sewing machine and sew down this side with 1/8 of an inch base stitch. And that is now base stitched into place. So I'm going to grab one of my lining panels and place that right sides together with the exterior fabric, and the zipper is going to be sandwiched in between. I'm going to line that up, clip it into place, and now I'm going to sew this on with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. All right, those are now sewn together, so I want to fold everything away from each other. I usually finger press, and then I'll use some clips here along the side to hold everything even. And then I will begin to top stitch along this sewn edge right here at 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to do that all the way down the side. All right, that is now top stitched. Now, I didn't mention it earlier, but I do like to always just start with my zipper tape a little bit longer, and then I will clean everything up. Also, to point out, you can see right here my lining is a little bit longer than the exterior, and that happens a lot because there's just a little bit of stretch to the lining. So I want to trim that even with the exterior. Okay, now I'm going to repeat the same exact process to attach the opposite side of the zipper panel, starting with the exterior, and then I'll do the lining. All right, here is my completed zipper panel. It's all top stitched. So the next thing that we need to do is we're going to grab our gusset. So this is our exterior gusset. We are going to place this right sides together with the zipper panel. Clip this into place, and then we are going to sew this on with a 1/8 of an inch base stitch. Repeat that for the opposite side as well. After you have gotten that base stitched into place, you are going to take your lining and place that right sides together with your zipper panel. Clip this into place and sew this on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, both sides are now sewn together. So this is where we're at. I'm going to trim down my seam allowances here to about 1/4 of an inch. And then we're going to turn everything right side out. I'm going to clip the lining and exterior gusset pieces together so that they are right sides together. I should say wrong sides together. So this is where we're at right now with our gusset. So we want to come in and we're going to top stitch along the side seams that we just created at 1/8 of an inch. So do that for both sides, here and here. And then you're going to take this at your sewing machine to base stitch your gusset and your zipper panels together. I like to put it into my sewing machine like this. So I usually start off here at the side seam and I begin to base stitch at 1/8 of an inch along here and just continue doing that all the way through the zipper panel, and then repeat the same process for the opposite side. All right, my gusset is now top stitched, or I should say base stitched, and I've got my exterior front panel here. All I need to do is turn this wrong side out. I have already found my top and bottom centers on both sides of my gusset by folding it in half here and then clipping notches on both the top and bottom for both sides. So make sure you do that. Then you're going to match that top center with the top center here on your exterior panel. And use your quilting clips to start clipping this into place. I start at the top And I usually put in like 3 clips here at the top. And then I turn it around and do the bottom. And then I just start to clip around the bag evenly from do a little bit on the left, a little bit on the right, a little bit on the bottom left and the bottom right, and just go around the bag. And we'll see if we need to clip any notches within our gusset. Sometimes we do. It all depends on the fabrics that we're using and how much stretch or no stretch that we have to the fabrics. I try to write my pattern so you don't have to do that, but sometimes we do. So let me continue to clip. I've got my gusset clipped on for the most part, but I do need to clip a little bit on my bottom curves right here in order to ease it around. So all you need to do is cut in about 1/8 of an inch and about 1/8 of an inch away from each other around the curves here, probably about 8 to 10 notches. And do that for both sides. From here, I'm going to then be able to clip the rest of this and it'll fit nice and snug. And then I'm going to sew this on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, my gusset is now sewn onto my front exterior, as you can see right here. And now it is time for us to add our binding. Now you can always turn this right side out and just check your corners and make sure there's no puckering. I've already done that with mine. I'm going to take these business cards out right now that are representation of my credit cards. Grab your binding. Now I did switch my thread color out to match my binding. That's very important to do because you really don't want to see any contrasting thread on binding. You kind of want to let it just disappear. So I like to start here on the bottom center, and I just start to clip this while giving it a little bit of a stretch as I clip along. If you don't give it a little stretch, then you're going to find that it's very difficult to sew on. So make sure that you are stretching as you clip. We have fold over elastic that's 1 inch wide on our website. I think we carry it in at least 20 colors, maybe more. One of our biggest sellers because everybody loves to use fold over elastic as binding. So let me continue clipping this on all the way around the bag. I've got my binding now clipped into place. So now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and I'm going to begin sewing at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance along the outside of the binding to get that all secured into place. All right, my binding is now attached and I did catch everything on both sides and I'm very happy with how that came out. If you haven't tried the fold over elastic binding, I highly suggest that you do. When I first started using it, I personally didn't like it. I didn't understand why everybody loved it so much, and that was because simply I wasn't giving it enough of a pull to make it snug as I attached it. But now I think I've mastered it. I'm very happy with it. So I like fold over elastic just as much as I like waterproof canvas binding. Now let's open up our zipper. And we're going to repeat the same process to attach the back exterior panel to the opposite side of the gusset. So make sure that that strap is tucked out of the way. Also, you want to make sure that you keep your D-rings out of the way. You don't want to accidentally get that with your needle. So I'm going to clip everything into place, sew this on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, then add my fold over elastic binding and sew that on with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, there is the second side all attached and bound. I did have to go back just a little bit along the side. While I did catch the fold over elastic, it was pretty close to the edge and I didn't want that to tear out as I was turning the bag right side out. So this is how the Joey Sling lining looks all completed. Let's turn her right side out, which is the most exciting part. First, I'm going to grab that strap and get that out of there. And this one can be challenging to turn because of the size, especially the mini version. You might struggle a little bit turning that right side out. I'm not going to be able to do this outside or holding this underneath the camera like this. I'm going to have to bring this close to myself. So I'm going to turn this right side out off camera. Okay, I've got the bulk of it there turned, so now I'll be able to push everything out and show you. Now just go all around those seams and push everything out. And work your edges here along your zipper panel and tuck that binding in and around there. The binding acts as a little bit of a stabilizer. That's why you don't really need stabilizer in your zipper panel because that gives some additional bulk right there and allows it to sit nicely. Okay, let's zip her up. Take a quick peek overall. So pretty in those lavender colors with the dark and the sage green. Let's grab our strap and unhook it here. Make sure it's not twisted. And pop it on one of the D-rings here. This is going to be the display bag in our Dunellen store. While I want to keep it for myself, I think this one is really eye-catching, so I am going to have this be the display bag that everybody sees when they come into the shop. There is the front slip pocket, which is perfect for your cell phone. And then you have your lining slip pocket right there. And then you have your credit card slots. And here is my Joey Sling, all completed. I think she's stunning. I love the rich colors of the purples and blacks and the sage green in this beautiful bag. I gotta tell you that the hardest part about a sling bag is when you first make it is how do you wear this thing? Which side do you clip your snap hook to the left, to the right side? Do you wear it over the left shoulder or the right shoulder? I don't know. For me, it was very confusing to put on a sling bag, but now I've got that mastered. I like it here on my right side because I'm left-handed, and I like to keep it up front versus wearing it behind me. But everybody is different on how they like to wear their sling. All right, so I want to see your sling bag, so make sure you stop by our Facebook group to share photos of your completed bag. If you are not on Facebook, then please email me at contact@sewyours, as I'd love to see all your makes with my sewing patterns and products. Now that I've sewn mine, it's time to sew yours.